Greetings. My name is Bruce Pardall. I'm a member of the Socialist Action Organization, and this talk, designed to be three or perhaps four parts, this talk on the global economy and the U.S. economy um, will cover the present situation, how we got here, which will be an historical sketch, and where things are going. During the time that I talk to you, I will also try to encompass and answer questions that might come up along the way. I'm presently really surveying friends of mine for what might be very good questions to give answer to, especially in the final part of this talk. Besides throwing an array of statistics at you and going into procedures on the historical development of the economy, I also hope to bring out certain salient facts that aren't covered enough about the specific forms of fraud that have played an enormous role in the tanking of this economy. And hopefully I can answer some questions or address some mysteries and contradictions of the economy to, let us say, the ordinary listener, because, well, economics has been called the dismal science, and very much so considered to be very mystifying. I will try to talk in plain language. I will try to do statistics that have an inherent commonsensical value to them, and make this as hopefully as understandable as I can. I first prepared this talk for a club at the University of California at Berkeley, which I'll call UC Berkeley in the future. I say this because this is possibly a national audience that's going to be hearing this address. It will be featured on the Socialist Action website, socialistaction.org. So it will be open to the public as well as all Socialist Action members. I've also been assured that the KWTF radio will also air this talk. When I first prepared this talk, which was for a meeting, as I said, of the Youth for Socialist Action at UC Berkeley, I gave about 60% of the talk and could not get further because it was so lengthy, and therefore I was asked actually to record it in 3 or 4 parts so as to be able to get through it. And those parts will be broken off in different segments, so one can listen to it all at once if one wants to, or take it a step at a time. What was interesting is that when I first started giving talks on the global and U.S. economy at Berkeley a couple of years back, there were prevalent student protests, sometimes involving the thousands. There was one student march that culminated with 3,000 students at the City Hall Plaza in Oakland. The same day, the Civic Center in San Francisco drew over 10,000. And so what you had intermittently, and sometimes quite vocally, vociferously, were demonstrations on the campuses of UC Berkeley. Actually, it happened at UC Davis also. Of course, what these protests were about were enormous tuition increases, which cumulatively, I believe, have, I'm sorry I don't have the statistic right off the cuff, but I believe that those tuition fees over the space of only 2 to 2.5 years went up well over 100%. In any event, the sad news is that today there isn't a vociferous student movement at Berkeley, and the reason why is pretty simple to discern. The vast majority of the students who engaged in those protests and did not succeed in turning it around are no longer at the University of California at Berkeley. It has become too expensive for them. And UC Berkeley, in order to have a large enough student body is actually doing a lot of recruiting from other states among people who are in upper middle class brackets. So anyway, to begin with, where are we now in statistical terms? I would say in summary that a series of government and government institutions and financial authorities are running out, are clearly running out, coming to an end to the measures they implemented to prevent financial collapse or a global depression. A report of the European Commission, that's the executive section of the Euro community, the European Union, said at the first week of November, as I speak to you, it's December 4th. Some stuff may quickly grow outdated, but some of this stuff won't. The European Commission's report is that business growth for the 17 nations that use the euro is projected to be 0.3% for this year. For the other 10 members of the Eurozone, these are countries that are adjacent to the core of 17 countries that use the euro, countries like Great Britain and a number of countries in Eastern Europe. The projected growth for them as of the end of December for this year will actually be slightly better than the euro-using countries. It'll be 0.4% rather than 0.3%. Also reported is a progression, excuse me a moment, is the projection that next year the 17 euro-using nations will have a decline in growth. They will officially be in recession for at least the first couple of quarters, with a growth measurement of 0.4%, and that the other 10 countries, the ones that don't use the euro, will have a negative growth of 0.3%. That's minus. That's less than the economy in 2012. Now, beside the general proximate causes of the depression that we are now in, and by proximate I mean very immediate, the terms that most people look to, that a financial crash because of the use of dubious financial instruments such as mortgage securities, subprime securities, and the like, caused the crash. It was the proximate cause. It was the cause that immediately brought about the crash. But I want to say that there's a prevalent view, specifically in Marxist economics, that doesn't really go along with that. And the question that we ask is what led the investors of the world to so abandon the real economy and place so much money in these dubious instruments? And many of them were smart enough, including Alan Greenspan, who, while he was president of the Fed, talked about irrational exuberance in the economy. What kept this behavior of irrational exuberance that led to spectacular crash, tens of millions of unemployed people in the United States and around the world? And actually that's a question which I hope to deal with more fully in the second part of this talk. We basically believe that that overproduction and a capacity utilization capacity is a common term in economics, which means that basically a factory can use just so much of its capacity, whether can it produce 90% of the goods that it was designed to, or is it 100%, or is it 50%?